Hi, thanks for coming to the Lincolnville Emancipation Day celebration. We're here celebrating the signing that set people of color, or at least set in motion, setting people of color free. It's January 1st. We're pretending it's 1863, even though it's 2018. We are hoping that people will come, that they will catch the spirit of what we're doing, and continue to tell the history, live the history, and let the history continue to grow.
I came today so I could learn more about this very important part of history, the Emancipation Proclamation.
And first time in the museum?
My second, and we brought friends with us for the first, who are visiting for the first time.
And it's changed, hasn't it?
It has changed. There are new exhibits, and I can't wait for the storytelling I hear is coming.
Hi, my name is Dr. Tony Gass. I'm a historian. I do a lot of stuff on the civil rights movement. And of course, St. Augustine was one of the major arenas of the civil rights movement. So I decided to come down on vacation, see St. Augustine, which of course is the oldest city in the United States, bring these pictures and these experiences, not only for myself, but for my students when I start to teach them in January. So that's the reason why I'm here.
Well, I'm here today because a friend of mine, James Bullock, asked me to participate in a short play that we're doing. It talks about the Emancipation Proclamation being read here in St. Augustine in 1863. The bell was rung, and the regiments that were here were black regiments. A lot of people don't know that. There were the 1st and South Carolina had about 7,000 troops here in total, and they were African American. All of them volunteers, and many of them had been slaves before they volunteered for the unit. And there's not a lot of people that know that the two regiments that were here were all African American.
I'm here today because all the resources of the community have not been fully utilized. Specifically, those dealing with the black community. On the north, we have Fort Mose, and in the south here, we have Lincolnville, specifically the civil rights movement. But in addition, we've never recognized the role that the Seminoles, including the African Americans involved in that movement, have played specifically in this town. That's why I'm here. Hopefully, we can have a more comprehensive tourism program, which includes all the resources, not just the fort, St. George Street, and the visitor center.
So this is the first in a series of topics that the Lincolnville Museum and Cultural Center will present as a look back at the 100 years between the Civil War and civil rights. The Emancipation Proclamation set in motion the march towards freedom for people of African American descent in America. It's a look back at what it was like in 1860s St. Augustine as the nation transitioned out of human bondage of people of African descent to a declaration that all men should be set free from the bonds of slavery.
Well, this makes it official.
It's mighty important, sir. What is it?
The pen is truly mightier than the sword.
What do you mean?
You know, I was an abolitionist, missionist preacher up in Massachusetts before the war. It's been one of my greatest honors to serve as a commander in one of the three first all-black regiments in this United States Army, fighting to preserve the Union. And I just wrote a letter to General Hunter explaining that my troops were fighting with nooses around their necks, that they had endured more than most of my officers have in their entire lives. What do you think about all this?
Permission to speak freely, sir.
Of course, Corporal.
Well, before all this started, sir, I had no country but the grave. And I'll find my home there before I'll be taken back as a slave. I can tell you this, the men will prove themselves, and they'll prove that they're as brave as any man. I can tell you, many of the men emancipated themselves. They left families behind. Some of them came all together. Some of them, true enough, were slaves. Some of them can't read nor write. But they share one thing, sir, the desire to be free. All I ever wanted was a chance. This is my chance, sir. My country is of me, sweet and of liberty, of thee I sing. And where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. If you heard this document, many of you are holding it, it's probably the most ambiguous thing you've ever read. I think Lincoln was wrong as far as that no one would remember these times. In a way, some of us are still stuck in those times, and maybe this is why we need a bell to ring in the new year. There's something about ringing that means clarity, and I could use a little clarity myself. But let it be said, I think that Mr. Lincoln was wise in that what he was really saying was that if you were a state in rebellion, that you could rejoin the Union and keep your slaves. What Mr. Lincoln was very specific about was that his goal was preserving the Union. To him, he said specifically, if I can do so and not free a single slave, I would. He said, if I can free some and not others, and that saved the Union, I would. If I have to free them all, I will. But if there's anything that the soldiers of the South Carolina Regiment said, was that they weren't waiting to be freed by anyone in Washington, D.C., and that they understood that there would be no surrender on any battlefield for a black soldier during the American Civil War. The complexity of this time and this war are as complex as our days today. Let's give those people as much credit as we give themselves. Did they figure it out? No. Did we figure it out? No. Are we trying to figure it out? Yes. And that's why you're all here. So on behalf of myself and Corporal Cato Bailey, I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank the Buffalo soldiers who come here all the way from Orlando, Florida. I'm hoping, gentlemen, that you'll stand up and escort our wonderful group downstairs.
I thought it was very interesting. I learned a lot more about history here in St. Augustine. It was very exciting. I was just happy to be part of it.
Thank you. I also learned a lot. In particular, I liked it from the perspective of the actors that played the various parts. The period costumes were spot on. Had not seen some of those costumes worn before, and just enjoyed hearing it as if it was happening in real time back in that period of history.
What did you think about the event upstairs about the Emancipation?
Oh, it's very personal. and emotional. It's like reliving that moment when I can imagine my great-great-grandfather was in Tallahassee, standing on the steps of the courthouse there in Tallahassee at that moment when the shackles were removed, and suddenly a dream of a lifetime was realized.